everybody, my name is Mr. Francy and welcome back to Mr. Francy Reads. Okay, so today we are doing my reading vlog covering everything that I've been reading from the 9th to the 15th of July 2023. So where we last left off, I was reading this book, Pretties by Scott Westerfeld. This is book 2 in the Ugly series. It is a YA dystopian, and well, last week I wasn't too thrilled with it. There was something I was looking forward to seeing at the beginning of the book, and then we had a time jump that occurred between books 1 and 2, and I didn't get to see it anyway. So it really did ultimately let me down. At least the beginning did anyway, but I have to say that it did really not improve at all. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. So there's not a lot I can say about the premise of this book because it is book 2, so it would be giving away spoilers, but I'll just quickly move on into my thoughts. So yeah, actually, let me go back for a sec and give you guys an explanation for this, a premise for the series as a whole. So in this series, the Ugly series by Scott Westerfeld, we followed this woman, or this girl by the name of Tally, and in this world, it's a dystopian futuristic world. When everyone turns 16, they go through surgery to make themselves look beautiful because they've found out that in the past, people were treated differently based on their looks. So if everybody goes through the surgery and ends up looking beautiful, then they won't be judged on looks, and people who are beautiful won't be favoured over others. So they're more favoured owing to their mind or other things like that. But Tally ends up running away on her 16th birthday, and then what I'll just quickly say is that eventually she gets to the point where she needs to go ahead and have the surgery. I don't think that's too much of a spoiler. I wanted to see the surgery take place. We did not get to see the surgery take place. So book 2 opens up with the surgery already having happened, and that really annoyed me. Okay, so yeah, just quickly, we ended book 1 knowing Tally was going to be made pretty. I was really excited to see the process. Then bam, page 1, paragraph 1 advises me, oh no, that already happened. This is why I hate time jumps. Book 1 led us to the point where she should be made pretty. I was so intrigued to see this play out, but oh no, that's not important enough to witness. I even checked to see if there was a 1.5 novella that shows the process, but no. So moving on from that, which took me a while to do admittedly, we then spend time in Prettyville. I loved this. I had been waiting all of book 1 to finally get there, and now we were here. This was great. The world building was fantastic. But then we had to go on this traveling/questing trope, and boy do I hate traveling/questing tropes. Besides, didn't we already do this in book 1? Now, let's talk about the traveling/questing trope real quick. In case you're new here or you don't know what that is, the traveling/questing trope, when I say it, what I mean is that we have our characters going on a quest where they either don't know where they're going, they don't know how they're going to get there, or both of them, both of those things. And so it's basically meandering travel, and it's just, I have to say, it's just really boring. So I don't get why authors do this, to be honest. But then again, hey, maybe J.R.R. Tolkien just ruined it for me with Lord of the Rings. Who knows? If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, I don't mean to offend. But if you've been with me long enough, you know I just did not like those books at all. I'm just not a fan of it. Moving on, but from then after that, I need to talk to you about the word bubbly. My word, we cannot stop using that word. Every page, it's bubbly this, bubbly that, and I was feeling bubbly, or that wasn't making me feel bubbly. It was like, enough already. Everything was bubbly, 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 bubbly. Now, I understand that certain authors, especially of certain genres, will take a certain word, especially a word that is showing that they're feeling good, and they will change that. Especially in sci-fi, I see that a lot. So instead of saying yay or awesome or good or whatever, they'll say something like sparks or whatever. But in this case, bubbly, it just didn't work for me, and it was overused. The ending was the saving grace for this book, just as it was with book 1. The ending was the saving grace there too. I'm intrigued to see what will happen to Tally in the next one, but I really, really hope we are done with the traveling/questing trope. And if we're not, then I think book 3 will let me down as well. Anyway, 3 stars for that one. I do recommend this series if you don't mind the traveling/questing trope. As I say, it did feature in book 1 as well as book 2, and it does occur for a long time. It covers a lot, most of book 1 and most of book 2. So do be mindful of that going in. But the world building for this dystopian world is amazing. And that is something you need for a dystopian book. You need to have amazing world building. Otherwise, what is the point? Because for those of you who don't know, if you haven't read dystopian before, dystopians are the opposite to a utopia where everything is beautiful and everyone's happy. A dystopian generally will have a tyrant or a group of tyrants who are running a particular world in a certain way, in a certain tyrannical way, let's say. And so therefore the world building becomes the most vital point of the dystopian because it shows you the ins and outs, the intricacies to do with what has made this world such a dystopian world. So it needs to work. And in this series, despite the fact that I don't like the traveling/questing trope, the world building still does hold up to this day for me. And that's why the book is receiving 3 stars as opposed to 2 or 1. But I'm interested to see what's going to happen in the next one, so I'll keep you informed. I believe the next one's called Specials, so we'll see how we go. So the next book that I picked up was this book, The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is an adult thriller, and I gave this book a total of 4.5 stars. Now, really interesting stuff. This is the 5th book that I've completed this month, and it was the latest book I completed. I still have not given a 5-star rating for a book this month, which is not like me. But even with this one, I went into this book after reading The Silent Patient, which is the first book that Alex Michaelides released. I read that last month and I loved it. It took me from not knowing if thrillers were for me, because a lot of thrillers I've read prior to that book let me down. But The Silent Patient was an amazing book. I gave it an overwhelming 5 stars. And then you all came back to me and said, Mr. Francy, if you like The Silent Patient, you need to read The Maidens because it is better. Now, I can understand where a lot of you are coming from. The reason why I gave it 0.5 stars was mainly owing to the setup. But we'll get there. Let's talk about the premise. Now, I'm going to put a spoiler tag up on the screen because for some reason when it comes to thrillers, apparently anything and everything that you may say about the premise can be deemed as a spoiler. So I'll put the spoiler tag up on the screen, but if you don't mind hearing the premise, then continue to listen. If not, scroll along till you no longer see the spoiler tag. So the premise of this book is that Edward Ficosa is a murderer. Of this, Mariana is certain, but Ficosa is untouchable. A handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University, Ficosa is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by the members of a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Mariana Andros is a brilliant but troubled group therapist who becomes fixated on the Maidens when one member, a friend of Mariana's niece Zoe, is found murdered in Cambridge. Mariana, who was once a student herself at the university, quickly suspects that behind the idyllic beauty of the spires and turrets and beneath the ancient traditions lies something sinister, and she becomes convinced that, despite his alibi, Edward Ficosa is guilty of the murder. But why would the professor target one of his students, and why does he keep returning to the rites of Persephone, the maiden, and her journey to the underworld? Okay, so we'll take the spoiler tag off the screen and I'm now going to give you my thoughts. Okay, so honestly, it was a boring start. As I was alluding to earlier, I took off 0.5 stars because the beginning just did not appeal to me. This surprised me as I was intrigued by his first book, The Silent Patient, all the way through. I get that ground laying needs to occur, but unlike that book, The Silent Patient, the setup of this book seemed to drag. But once things got going, the book became littered with quintessential Alex Michaelides brilliance. Mariana is the perfect protagonist, and the mystery behind who this murderer is becomes incredibly intriguing the more we move forward in the story. There's a reveal of sorts that happens towards the end. I won't say what it is, I'm just giving you my thoughts on the reveal. There's a reveal of sorts that happens towards the end that had me thinking a certain thing that was shocking in and of itself, but then the actual reveal of who, what, where, when, and why came to light, and I was blown away by it. So yeah, as I was with the reveal by The Silent Patient. So aside from the uninteresting setup, which as I say, I docked the 0.5 stars for, this book was fantastic. And that's 2 amazing thrillers in a row from me from Alex Michaelides. And y'all, I actually wanted to change my TBR next month to add another Alex Michaelides book, but he's only released 2 books and his next book is not due out until 2024. So Unfortunately, I'm going to have to wait on that one. But all in all, I really, really did enjoy this book. And I think if you're looking for a thriller that is going to do what a thriller claims to do, which is have you on the edge of your seat and, as the genre suggests, thrill you, then I do recommend Alex Michaelides. So I know that different people like different types of thrillers. Some like their thrillers that are just a little bit of mystery here and there, where others, like me, love their thrillers because they have you on the edge of your seat all the way through. If you are like me, Alex Michaelides, fantastic author when it comes to thrillers. So yeah, a boring setup, in my opinion, but the rest of the book was quintessential Alex Michaelides, 4.5 stars. So the next book I picked up is a book that I've been waiting 6 months to read. For those of you who don't know, last year on my SAS list, I had placed The Amish Candy Shop by Amanda Flower, and I absolutely love this series. Well, last month, the latest book in that series came out, and now I finally get to read it, and that is this book, Blueberry Blunder. Okay, so I am not finished with this. I'm up to chapter 14 of this book, and so far it's actually been okay. It took a little while to get to the murder, I have to say. So we find the victim in this one in chapter 9, which is pretty late for a cozy, but I like my cozies to be cozy, so I guess it's all right. Yeah, what can I say about this one? So when it comes to cozies, apparently when it comes to reviewing cozies, they're the opposite of a thriller. You can talk about the premise, even if it's like book 8 or 9 or 10, and no one really seems to care. So no one really seems to care if it's a spoiler or anything like that. So I will give you a little bit of background on this one. So in this one, we continue to follow Bailey King, who is trying to get her candy factory built. So for those of you who haven't read the series, predominantly it follows Bailey King, who works in Amish country in Harvest, Ohio, who is not an Amisher, but in book 1, her grandfather was becoming deathly ill. I should say. So she went to the candy shop to work with them, and she decided to stay on. She's not Amish, she just lives there. But in order to progress the business, she's decided to build this factory, which will just make things a lot easier for the candy company itself. The book opens up with there being some delays with the construction of the factory, and Bailey ends up hiring the construction worker, which causes a lot of drama, as I'm sure you can imagine. And then everyone's favorite organizer, I don't remember her name. Is it Juliet? No, Juliet's the other one. But Margot, the town organizer of events, runs up to Bailey just after she has fired the construction worker and says, Bailey, there's a crisis. We have a blueberry crisis on our hands and we need you right now. So Bailey has been chosen to be the blueberry princess for the harvest celebration. How will things go down from there? Only time will tell. Not too much later, at nighttime, Bailey ends up going back to the construction site because she hadn't given it a thorough check before she fired the head construction worker. And while she's looking around at the construction site, she and her cousin Charlotte find someone dead who has been murdered. So now Haley, as she does in every other book, so are we surprised? Not really, ends up adopting the role of being an amateur sleuth to try and solve the case. So yeah, so far it's been wonderful to be back in Harvest, Ohio. As I say, the mystery did take a while to get going, but I do love being back in this world. For those of you who are wondering whether or not you should pick up the series because of the fact that it is set in Amish country, it is not doused in Amish lore. The only time really that Amish things come up is when a comparison is made, such as an Englisher, which is what Amish people refer to as a non-Amish person, may do something this way, and in Amish country we do it this way. So outside of a comparison being made, it's not heavily doused in Amish culture, if that helps you to determine whether you're going to pick it up or not. So yeah, so far so good. And we'll see how things progress. I have to say that for the last couple of books, the mystery itself hasn't intrigued me, but the cozy side has. And the cozy side is still intriguing me to this point. All right, so let's now take a look at what I plan to read for the upcoming week. Okay, so of course the first plan that I have is to continue on with Blueberry Blunder by Amanda Flower and get through that one. I'm hoping to get through this one by Wednesday, and then after finishing this book, my goodness, I am picking up a book that I shelved 3 years ago, and that is this book, The Foxhole Court by Nora Sakovic. Okay, so let me give you a very quick backstory, because we all know that Mr. Francy loves his story time. So, 3 years ago in 2020, I picked up this book and began reading it, but I became distracted, and this is a book that once you're given a piece of information, the author doesn't continue to go back to that piece of information to make sure it sinks in. So if you miss it once, you've missed it completely. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you get what I'm saying. So I ended up missing 3 very integral nuggets of information, and eventually just got to the point where I said, I'm just going to shelve this for now and just keep going with my TBR, and I'll get back to it later. Well, later ended up being over 3 years later, or 3 years later? Yes. 3 years later, and here we are, picking up the book again. So I'm really excited to get back into this book and not be distracted this time around. This is an adult LGBTIQ plus male romance, I guess, that includes sport. I'm still trying to work out what the name of this sport is, because our protagonist, his name is Neil, is playing a sport that sounds like a cross between lacrosse and netball. I don't know. It's very different. Maybe lacrosse and squash, something like that. Anyway, we can talk more about that once I get back into it, but I am intrigued to get back to this one. And then, if I still have time, I'm going to pick up this book, Escape by Ian Rob Wright. This is an adult horror, and I just came off finishing Ian Rob Wright's series, the Damien-verse series. That series was just fantastic. So just like with thrillers, I've had some ups and downs, but then last year I picked up a book called The Housemates by Ian Rob Wright. And for those of you wanting a very quick idea of what that book is about, imagine Big Brother, the TV show, combined with the film series Saw. Put it together in one book and you've got The Housemates. It was fantastic, but it's the highest level of horror I've ever read. So do be mindful, if you are going to go into that book, that it is called a horror, an adult horror at that, for a reason. And all of Ian Rob Wright's books have just left me absolutely floored, but in the best possible way. They've all received very high ratings from me. So I actually reached out to Ian Rob Wright after I read The Housemates last year, and he actually recommended this book to me, Escape, because he said that if you like The Housemates, you'll love this one. So after I've now that I've finished that series, Damien-verse, I'm going to pick up Escape. And the very little that I know about this book, because I usually like to go in blind, but the very little I know about this one is that it's set in an escape room. So it's a horror set in an escape room, and I'm very, very, very excited about that. So those are the 3 books that I plan to get through for the remainder of the week. But how did your reading week go? Let me know in the comments section below. I hope you had an amazing reading week, and I hope you have an awesome reading week to come. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another, and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, say it with me. Happy reading. Bye everyone.